guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about how long to wait before re-attempting the medical coding certification exam if you have failed. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so if you have failed the medical coding certification exam, whether you sat for the CCS, the Gold Standard of Medical Coding Credentials, the CCA, the CCSP, or the CPC, my advice today is meant to set you up for success. It doesn't matter how many points you failed by, okay? This applies to all groups of people, whether if you barely failed or you really failed, okay? This is my advice. All right, so here we go. If you have failed your medical coding certification exam, the American Health Information Management Association, who manages the CCS, the CCA, and the CCSP, say that you have to wait 90 days in order to be able to reattempt a medical coding certification exam. There are no limits to the amount of attempts that you get, okay? At least there's none listed on the website, all right? But if you need to reattempt, you must wait 90 days, all right, before reattempting to, sit for the exam again. The thing about it is that's a great amount of time to be able to go back to the drawing board and decide, okay, this is where I went wrong. I ran out of time. I spent too much time on this. I was overthinking. I wasn't strong in this subject. This will give you that time to be able to restudy again. And this same advice goes to those who have failed the CPC exam. Now, AAPC has a different amount of time, like the retake policy. I don't really know what it is, but I have heard people say that, oh, I reattempted it within a month or whatever, and they either passed or they failed it. I still would recommend for the AAPC folks to wait 90 days before reattempting a test again. And the only reason that I say this is because this is going to give you that time to be able to get more practice in. Now, if you have paid for the 2 attempts, I don't know if there's like a time limit on that second attempt, and then if there is, obviously you need to observe that. But if you're not under any time restraints, right, I would say to wait 90 days before reattempting the test again. It doesn't matter if you barely failed it, okay? That's just what I would say, because if you have failed it, this means that you're lacking somewhere, either with speed or with confidence, because sometimes when we second guess ourselves, that also takes time away from us as we are sitting for these exams. So that's just something that you have to know. And again, whether you are sitting for the CCS, CCA, CCSP, or the CPC, waiting 90 days is going to go a long way into getting you better disciplined for the next go around. And at least this way, with the second attempt, you know what to expect, even if it's more than 2 times that you've attempted this. But you're going to know what to expect. You're going to know what you're going to be up against, because either you've been to the Pearson View Center if you're testing with a HEMA, CCS, CCA, or CCSP, or if you are, taking the test at home with AAPC, you're going to know what that whole process is like. Or if you're going to a place where you have to physically go because they're administering the paper test there, that's totally fine too. If I would have my would-rathers with AAPC, if I'm having the choice between testing at home and testing at a place where I have to physically go, I'm going to go to the place I have to physically go. I'm not going to want to sit here and make sure that my camera is at a certain angle and I have to be in this quiet place and something could happen and the power could go out, or any number of things could go wrong. So I would say in that instance to always go where you can go in person, okay? It's not always the case for some people, but if you have the choice and if you're able to, I would strongly recommend that you at least make sure that you go to the place that you have to physically go. During this time, this 90 days where you're having to study again for this reattempt, don't get too hung up on the fact that you failed. You failed, it happened, it is just something that happens. It doesn't mean that this isn't for you. It does not mean that you shouldn't do this. It just means that you are going to have to do a little bit more investing in yourself to be able to pass this certification exam. If you look at the pass-fail rates of the exams, especially for AHIMA because they have them posted, you'll see that it's very difficult to pass these exams. And there's for good reason. It's testing you on a lot of material, and it requires your knowledge to be broad, okay? This is possible for new people who have no experience in the field, but it is something that you do have to work at. Unfortunately, medical coding as a profession gets sold so much to the wrong people, and people who are just after it because it's a money thing and they want to be able to travel and do all these things. They get sold a lot of lies in order to be able to get into it. And that's the thing that you have to be watchful for. But don't let that be your focus during these 90 days. Focus on the fact that you need to study. Set up those 20 hours per week that you should be studying, where you're reading the coding guidelines once per week or you're listening to them. A few nights ago, I shared my tip on, how to be able to listen to the guidelines. You go and you launch Microsoft Edge, the browser, and you download the coding guidelines from CMS, and you can be able to listen to them, okay? Because it'll give you click on the word, any word, and it'll give you the 3 ellipses, and you will have all your options pop up, and it says read aloud is one of your options, and you can listen to it while you're while you're washing dishes or while you're doing other things. You could be listening, okay? We need to incorporate other methods of learning, and so that we don't think that I have all these things to do, I don't have time. You do have time. People will make time for things that are important to them, that are a priority for them. If you are doing this and you're studying 20 hours per week, 20 hours per week over a 3-month span is going to give you 80 hours for 1 month. And in 3 months, that's going to give you 240 hours of study time, which is a lot of study time, all right? And it is possible. You do not have to do all 20 hours in a week in one sitting. What you're going to do is you're going to start 30 minutes in the morning, listening to something or doing flashcards or watching a video, depending on your schedule. If you're driving somewhere, you can listen, all right? 30 minutes at lunchtime, you can use flashcards, or you can watch a video while you're eating your lunch. You can be listening to something, okay? Again, while you're eating your lunch. 30 minutes on the drive home, again, you can listen to another, listen to the guidelines or listen to something, right? And then when you get home, you have 1 hour and 1 hour. A whole hour to do workbook, where you're working on your workbook. Any of the workbooks that I recommend for studying for the exam are in the description box below. The ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS coding handbook with the answers, and the CPC study guide. It does not matter if you're sitting for an AHIMA exam, you can still use a CPC study guide because it's covering all of your outpatient coding, all that CPT coding. We all use the same CPT codes. So they have wonderful exercises in that book. AAPC got that right. The ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS coding handbook with the answers from the American Hospital Association. Nellie Leon Chizen is the one who wrote that book. That's a fantastic book to learn your diagnosis coding. And if you are taking an exam that covers inpatient procedures, that's also in there as well. Even if you're taking the outpatient coding exam, you can just focus on the diagnosis coding in that book, in that workbook. But if you do that 1 hour and then you take a break and then you come back to studying for another hour, that's 3.5 hours in one day that you've managed to squirrel in while you're doing your daily life, that's 3.5 hours. In 5 days, 5 consecutive days, that's 17.5 hours. And now all you need is 2.5 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday. And that's pretty darn easy to fit in somewhere. Okay, so if you can manage to get disciplined enough to do that, working with the workbooks and figuring out these problems, then as far as in the workbook, then you'll be able to get a much higher score when you take your test again. The potential to get a much higher score is going to be there because you've spent more time learning. And then you're going to be more confident walking in that second time versus the first time when maybe you didn't study as much. Maybe you were only studying 5 hours a week. Maybe you were saying, well, Blue, no, I have a full-time job. I have kids. A lot of people have full-time jobs and children, and they still manage to do this because, again, it's important. It's important to do this, to get this part done so that you can get out there and find a good job in medical coding. Another thing that I will say as an aside to this whole thing is if you are a parent and you're saying, Blue, I just don't have the time, my kids, guess what? Your kids are watching you. They're watching everything that you do, whether you know it or not, okay? And if you say, well, my kids don't listen to me, they're watching what you're doing, okay? That's what kids do. They watch. And as they watch you doing what you do, if you just give up on studying, if you don't show that commitment to studying, that's what they're going to do. They are not going to study, or they're going to give things up very easily because there's just a little bit of adversity coming at them, because that's what they're seeing. That's what they're seeing is okay to do, right? Oh, well, my parents gave up, so I'm going to give up too. No, they need to see you working hard and balancing between studying and being with them, because it is possible to be able to do all these things. People on my channel have written in and told me their stories. They're full-time nurses, they have kids, they have families, and they're still able to do this. They're managers, they have kids that they got to take care of at home too. Some of these kids have conditions that they have to have extra care, and they're still able to pull off studying, and they're still able to pull off doing that. Some of the people who are older who watch my channel and who are taking care of their grandkids, or they're taking care of their parents, they still make the time, and they still have full-time jobs. So if they can do it, there's really no excuse if this is really what you want to pursue. If you are not wanting to pursue this and you're trying to look for excuses and reasons why, you'll see every excuse and every reason why that you don't have time, or you can't do this, or no, 20 hours per week is too much. 20 hours per week is the minimum that you should be putting in. Okay, if you can get to that, you can do anything. All right, but it starts off by just making the effort and making more of a solid effort. And I'm going to be doing a video later on about balancing work and life, and how do we do this as medical coders or medical coding students. So I'll be discussing that later on. But again, taking this 90 days in between tests and not really feeling that pressure, because if you failed it, you failed it, okay? And you just need more time to study. And again, getting on that schedule is going to help you. And if you get to a point where you're saying, this doesn't make sense to me, I don't understand how to look at procedures, or I don't understand how to do this, find yourself a mentor or find a tutor. This is the best time to do this because you're still in the learning phase, all right? And some of these fast-paced medical coding programs, of course, they don't teach very well because they are a business selling a product, and you just bought that product. You bought the dream, the product, whatever it is that they were selling. And if you say, well, Blue, I feel like they just took advantage of me, there's no point in feeling sorry for yourself now, okay? You have a bright future to look forward to. You have a wonderful career that's waiting for you, because they need medical coders. Trust me, the industry needs medical coders. But if you are staying stuck on that hamster wheel of, I keep failing because I have this and I have anxiety and I have, all these worries and things like that, put that energy into these books. Put it into the books, because as much energy as you put into worrying for almost nothing, right? You can be putting into the books. And if you put that same energy that you spent worrying or making excuses, or you can't do this or you can't do that because of X, Y, and Z, if you put all of that energy into studying, reading, working through the workbooks, and working on your speed and your skill as far as looking up things in the book, trust me, again, that's going to go a long way into helping you pass that second time around. All right. And guys, these things happen. People get nervous, they get scared. It's okay. But again, preparing yourself is going to help you to not be so worried and not to be so scared. Because again, you're already going in having experience, knowing what to expect versus a person who doesn't know what to expect, right? So that's just something that you all ought to know. Take the time to listen to those guidelines. The guidelines will really help you to know about sequencing, about injury coding, about statuses and things like that, as far as like your Z codes, knowing about your neoplasm coding. There's a bunch of things that are covered in the coding guidelines, and it's meant for you to listen to read. You don't have to fully understand it, because you won't fully understand it until you get into the real world. But it will help you for the time being to have that primer and that base in your brain already that's going over those guidelines, because these books can go in there with you, all right? But then you'll already know, because you've been through the guidelines so many times, you will know where to find them. And so that will be very helpful for you. Whereas maybe if you didn't do that before, then you're going to see the complete difference there, But don't put so much pressure on yourself to memorize things. It's not about memorization. It's about recall. And there's a big difference between memory and recall. Recall is where you're going to be able to, okay, in this type of scenario, I will know what to do. Memory is, of course, well, what specific year was this, or what was this, or what was that? They want specific answers to specific questions. But in recall, it's in a general sense. What do we do here in this scenario? What will we do here? And that's the same thing with, like, the coding questions, or anything else that they're going to be asking you. Because of course it's not just coding, it's also, asking you questions about reimbursement, and also about like HIPAA and things like that. And these are on all of the 4 main medical coding certification exams. So again, these are the basic things that you do need to know. If you are wondering what I recommend for like HIPAA and OIG and all those kinds of things, medical law and ethics, the book that I recommend is in the description box below. You do not have to click on that link. The title is there. You can check it out at the public library. There's a lot of really great resources that can be found by going to the library. And that's something that is very helpful. Google is also another great resource that you can look through, obviously, that would help you, because you can ask it direct questions, all right? And you'll be able to learn that way as well. So that's just my advice, guys. It's no point in rushing again after you have failed your first attempt, and then you're going to take the test again as quickly as possible. Or if you fail in a HEMA exam, you think, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and schedule the AAPC CPC exam. That's not the way to do it, guys. If you failed one, trust me, you can easily fail another one, like another type of exam as well. So that's not something that is an option or should be an option for you, because again, it's just more money that's going to go out. Take your time, stop, and review your own skill. Now, they're not going to tell you specifically what you missed on these exams, but they will tell you the domains and the percentages that you got in those domains, and what was your score, your overall score. And so that's how you can use that to know what you have to really kind of concentrate on when you come up with your second study plan, all right? But do not neglect other things like looking up codes or, practicing with those types of things, because you still want to be able to encompass everything in your study plan, but you want to make sure that you really kind of focus on the things that you messed up on, or the things that that you didn't feel as strong with, okay? None of these exams, with a HEMA, none of the exams are the same. So what you may have been tested on in one exam, you may, it may be different for the next exam, okay? Because it comes from a pool of about 1 million questions. So that way, and I say this facetiously, obviously, but if no 2 exams are the same, Okay, and they do that to protect the integrity of these credentials. And that's a pretty good way, right? Because nobody had the exact same exam. Okay, but we all know that these are the domains that are covered on those exams. Now, AAPC is different in the fact that they have their tests online or they have them in person. And again, all of the tests are administered through Pearson VUE for AHEMA. And so that's just something that you need to know there. But take the time, guys. It's an additional 90 days, and it does give you a goal date that you can set to take your next certification exam, so that way you're not falling off on the thing of, well, I didn't pass, so I'm not going to reattempt it. I mean, that's just such a waste. It's a waste to do that to yourself, and it's a waste for all the resources that you wasted as well. As far as like, okay, well, you had to take out a student loan, you had to do this, you had to do that. If you failed the first time, it doesn't mean it's a reason to give up. It's a reason to dig your heels in and try harder. And don't ever give up trying hard at something, because people so easily give up nowadays. It's so disheartening when I see that. When I see people just give up because, they didn't pass it the first time. Okay, then what are you going to do? Pout about it? I mean, because again, you spent all that time learning this particular subject, and then for you to give it up so easily, why would you do that? Because if you go to another field and you study something else and you say, well, I don't like this because I failed it, and you go to another field, then you're going to do the exact same thing there because lessons in life will repeat themselves until you learn them. So until you learn to accept a little bit of humility, like, okay, I failed this test. Okay, so now I got to try harder. And once you start meeting every challenge that you're being challenged by the universe or, whatever you feel, by the industry itself, once you start meeting those challenges, you'll see that you're going to turn things around a lot for yourself just by making that extra effort. That's my advice anyway. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.